Okay, so I felt like doing this a little bit differently than I had seen before, in a little bit more pragmatic approach to like a tier list. And that is, how much fun are you gonna be having in these games at 1 hour, 10 hours, and 100 hours? And so like, let's build a tier list for the first hour. Coming in at number 4. This is hard to say because I actually love this game, but Diablo 4 is the worst hour 1 experience. It's not even bad. It just doesn't rev my engine. Like there's nothing that's just like, oh man, like there's no like super compelling story shit going on. Like the intro cutscene's fucking badass, but like you don't feel like there's nothing that like grabs onto you. Number 3 is gonna be Path of Exile. It's equally hard because in Path of Exile, I definitely felt better than I had in a while in a game. However, the first hour of it is mostly just confusion. You honestly feel like you need to look up a guide. You know what I mean? And you're just like, oh God, but it's fun. Whereas Diablo 4, I didn't personally get a crazy excitement. And that moves to slot number 2, which is Diablo 2 Resurrected. The first hour of that game, and this is a tough one to admit, because for me, so long, that has been my favorite. Like, no contest. A lot of the game is carried by the aesthetic vibe of this game. In an hour, you're not going to accomplish that much, but you are going to get through a few quests, and the quests are sick. They're epic. You feel like you're in a world, and you feel like you're a part of something, and it's just something that you can't really like quantify. So juicy, so artistic, and I love it. But a glaring issue with Diablo 2, especially now, is that mechanically it's just not there. Like, I'm gonna drag in a game that shouldn't even be in this video, and I'm just gonna say like Lost Ark, shitloads of problems, irredeemable problems. Ignore monetization for 1 second and just hear me out. I had less than 20 ping where I live in that game, and the fucking combat literally ruined me. After I played the combat in Lost Ark, I just like couldn't go back to shitty, clunky combat in ARPGs. Sadly, like, I stopped being able to overlook the early game of Diablo 2. And that is why space number 1 for my 1 hour tier list is, of course, Last Epoch. Actually, the first 10 minutes of this game kind of suck. Like, I won't lie to you, the first 10 minutes are like, what the fuck is going on? But after you get through the first 10 minutes and you hit like level 6 and you get a couple abilities and you get your foot in the door and you're like starting to roll, and you see the passive trees and you see like the way the game is kind of working, and you start to roll and you get a couple moves, all of a sudden you're going like, whoa, this is... when did I start having fun? Like, you don't even realize it. All of a sudden, you're in a flow state. I haven't played an ARPG that got me in a flow state in a very long time. And like a good example is cringe alert. League of Legends puts you in a flow state. That's like objectively one of the reasons why people play it. It puts you in a flow state. Obviously, people are pissed, of course, for different reasons, but that's why people play League of Legends by and large. I was in flow state in Last Epoch at level 10. That's not something to be overlooked. I was vibing to the music. I was vibing to the art style. The graphics are not anything to write home about, but the art style is very creative. Story, lost as fuck. Can't lie for 1 minute. Voice acting, okay. Not anywhere near what Diablo 2's voice acting was. You know what I mean? Even Diablo 4's voice acting was primo. But again, those things kind of like aren't as important as like, is the game sick to play? And of the 4, I promise you, you play all 4 of those games for 1 hour raw. Last Epoch is a banger fucking hour. Every time, man. It's just good. You're gonna love it. And if I was gonna recommend something to somebody who's like, oh, I wanna play something for the mechanics, of those 4 games, it's like not even fucking close. Okay, so let's move on to 10 hours. Basically, the way that I'm gonna look at this, now you've gotten in the game and you've probably beaten the first act. If you've been playing like with direction, you've gotten them, you know, maybe level 20 or something like that. You know, you're getting somewhere in the game, and you've ideally now you've got several abilities that you're using. A build is fleshing out, things are getting going, and you're having fun. Let's start with the bottom of the list. And again, this is like a nightmare for me. I want to make it clear. I love all 4 of these games at 10 hours. Love them all. So I'm going to be a little critical. I would say the worst of the 4 games is Diablo 4. Diablo 4, 10 hours in, you know, you've seen some cool shit. There's been some cool cutscenes, a few fun boss fights. You've got a handful of abilities, but the talent system is not what I would call riveting. You're not looking around and making builds and shit. You're not like trying a bunch of, like, you might try like one or two things, but like ultimately you're not like going crazy with it. The art direction is cool and there are some very beautiful things and the music is great. So you're going to be having fun, don't get me wrong, but I find it very unlikely that you're going to be fucking screaming. You know, like you're not going to be on a roller coaster. Depending on the class you're going to, it might even be worse than what I just described. Like I play Sork, right? So I'm having fun. By then I've got teleport and shit and I'm living it up, you know, and everybody else is walking around. Second, this is painful as shit, but I'm going to say Diablo 2. And Diablo 2 is very good in Act 1. It is awesome. And the Andariel fight is fun as shit, you know, when you're beating it and going through the zones and, you know, getting a couple cool pieces of gear, getting talent points. Again, the talents are not riveting. You're not going to be like losing your mind, you know. You probably aren't even you can't even respec. You know, you might be trapped in a build that sucks or like confused, or if you're a new player or whatever. So in 10 hours, like you're not going to be losing your mind. That being said, the art and the vibe is just nuts. And if we were going off art and vibe alone, Act 1 of D2 art, I mean, it's sick. It's better than D4. It's better than PoE, but the mechanics are just like, you don't ramp up. You have a couple moves tops and you're just generally like, the playstyle is a little boring. Second place for 10 hours played. It's gotta be PoE, baby. It's good. It's fucking great. At this point, you're getting through the first section of the campaign and you're just like starting to look at this ridiculous talent tree and just like probably scrolling like an animal and just like looking through everything and being like, wow, this is overwhelming but exciting. And you know, so I definitely feel like this is the point where the game starts to become very, very fun. Start to get sucked in. For many people, this is the point where you're gonna be like, whoa, what can I do in this game? The art direction is like, to me, I mean, personally, it's not something to go crazy over. You know, the music is not insanely memorable. It's good, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are good about it. It's a slightly dated game in terms of graphics. There's negative qualities. So mechanically not that crazy at this point. Generally, your moves aren't going to be that crunchy. Your animations aren't going to be that wild. You start to see the potential of what you're doing. And that is why I got second place here, because you start to see what could be. And again, here we are. And I'm not shilling here. And if you want to disagree, by all means. 10 hours played, baby, it's gotta be Last Epoch again. It's gotta be Last Epoch again. Why? 10 hours in, I have a fucking list of abilities that I could be using. I'm respecing, it takes 2 seconds to respec, no problem. We're trying different shit. You have unlimited stash tabs. You're just vibing out of control, picking up anything you want, throwing it in the stash. Don't know what you're doing. Don't even understand crafting, but you're doing it because who gives a shit, because it costs like nothing. So you're just having a great time. It's low impact and you're trying things. It encourages you to try things. It wants you to experiment. It wants you to explore. You can tell the game is designed in a way that it wants you to dig around in it. And these other games, for as good as some of them are, it really feels like it's pushing back against exploration and experimentation. And then that leads to like watching guide videos and shit. Fuck guide videos, man. I just put one out. Watch it. But the thing of it is, on the real, why is this my favorite one at 10 hours? And it just goes. You know, at 10 hours, you're just going, man. You're not like fucking tripping and stumbling and confused and looking around. Like, there's no hang-ups or alt-tabbing, watching a video on some shit. Like, nah, man, like you're going. And you feel like you're in the driver's seat. Like you're not like getting your hand held or like trapped in a build. Like you're free, you're experimenting, you're learning. It's so good for that. For those 10 hours, it's like the addiction is forming. Like actively. For me, it was that way. And for everyone I've talked to, it's been that way. Let's move on to what people are going to consider is the most important section. Okay, let's move on to the most important part of the video for many of you, which is which game will be your favorite at 100 hours. And I have terrible news for myself, because at 100 hours played, coming in at 4th place, it's going to be Diablo 2. I know, it's disgusting. The implications of this are disgusting. I understand. But hear me out. because I've given this some thought. I think the problem is in Diablo 2, probably by now you're above level, 90, or well, you at least above level 80, even if you're, not that great at the game. And what are you doing? You are grinding incremental, teeny tiny little growth. Probably by now, best case scenario is you've made a second or a third character. That is like best case scenario, that you have multiple characters and you've done the campaign 3 times. There is not a different way to play this game. If I had to break down why this is the worst game at 100 hours of these 4, it's because there's only one way to play it. And that one way is fucking amazing. But like once you've done it a few times, it's like done. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing else to see there. And a lot of people are going to disagree. I mean, personally, it's kind of insane for me saying this because I've played the game for thousands of hours, but times have changed, because up next we've got Diablo 4. And in Diablo 4, you're going to be feeling significantly better than Diablo 2. And I hear what you're saying is like, no, this game sucks. And you're right. It's not as good as Diablo 2, but got more going on in the back end. It just has more things to do. There are more ways to play the game. Respecing is more forgiving in Diablo 4 than it is in Diablo 2. There's more build diversity in Diablo 4 than there is in Diablo 2. Not to say there's a lot. I'm just saying there's more, right? You can have more fun with one character in that game. Obviously the graphics are more modern. The combat is better. If somebody's like casual and they're like, hey, which game should I play? Diablo 2, Diablo 4? I literally tell them Diablo 2. So I realize this sounds like it doesn't make sense. But that's because many people are not going to obsess over video games. Now, if somebody's like, I'm going to fucking obsess over video games, I'm going to tell them to not play either of those 2 games and to play the second place game, which is Path of Exile. And this is also probably a little contentious, right? But here's my reason. At 100 hours in Path of Exile, like you would think, oh, you're gonna fucking be a beast at the game. I'm here to tell you, you are not. Like at 100 hours in Path of Exile, like I was still watching a lot of guides. I was still like asking my friends, like, how do you do this mechanic? Or like, what's the best way to do this? Or like, what piece of gear do I need for this? And like researching, like actually at 100 hours, there were times where I felt like I was literally just getting started, which is so sick and beautiful in a way. Conceptually, it's a very, very beautiful idea. However, in another way, what the fuck? Like you do something for 100 hours, there's part of me that wants to be like, oh, am I playing the game yet? Like, I don't know what I'm doing still. And you can call me an idiot, and I might be, but I was pretty good at the game at 100 hours. That's not to say I had no idea what I was doing. That's just to say that it is disorienting still, and in a sense, I didn't really get that vibey feeling of like, just chilling and like doing my thing. And so finally, first place, and we already know what I'm gonna say. It's Last Epoch, baby. 100 hours in, you've probably crunched a character. They're probably like just dimed and you're like, oh, this is fun. You've probably tried several builds with them. That character's probably had like several builds, several iterations. You've learned a lot about the game. You've gained so much knowledge. You've probably crushed some end game shit and possibly, also made a second character. And if you're a beast, you've probably done 2-3 characters and they're all in the end game and you're fucking around and you're looking big. You are getting close to a really comprehensive understanding of Last Epoch. And my feeling right now is that you're getting towards the end of what to do in the game. You're going to start asking yourself questions like, okay, well, do I like this experience enough to just keep going? Or do I need something more? For this reason, I think at 100 hours, a lot of people might be petering off with how much they're playing the game. But up till this point, I think that you're going to be pretty well addicted. So there it is. I was honest with myself and I was honest with you guys, and it's a little weird to say that tier list in the way that I said it. Sometimes it's like hard and it feels yucky, but like if I'm just being honest with how I feel. So if I was going to recommend any game, it would be Last Epoch. Is it clickbait to be like, this is the best game? Well, to me it is. Is it a coincidence that it just came out? Yeah, it is. Because it's actually my favorite one. At 1,000 hours, we'll see. And I'll do an update. I'll say at 1,000 hours is Last Epoch still my favorite game. Let's be real. It's literally only going up against PoE. They're going to need to do a lot of work to beat PoE at 1,000 hours. PoE at 1,000 hours is you're just fucking living it up. But the end game just isn't there like PoE, and obviously that has to do with the fact that it's, you know, just got its official release. After a year or two, who knows? Let's talk potential for these 4 games. The potential for Last Epoch is insane, guys. This is the beginning. 2 years from now, it might be literally the game of my dreams, man. You know, PoE 2 comes out as well, so it's like, but for now, you know, like, no copium. That's just me being real. If somebody, you know, like ask me like, oh man, what's your favorite RPG of all time? I just like say Diablo 2 before I can even think. Like I just puke it out. Diablo 2. Because I love it, because like I said in the beginning, it's just connected to my heart. But it's like if somebody asks me, it's like, what game do I play? Hey man, what game should I play? Dude, I'm gonna tell them Last Epoch every fucking time. So, there you go. Actually, this whole video is horseshit. The #1 winner of all 3 sections is Diablo Immortal.